Now, tourism is one of the industries that have been hit hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. Due to travel restrictions and quarantine rules upon entry, international travel saw 1 billion fewer travellers arriving at tourist destinations last year, and a loss of about $1.3 trillion in export revenues, according to the World Bank. And that will be 11 times greater than the loss recorded in 2009 after the global financial crisis. But in recent days, countries like the United States and the United Kingdom have announced that they will be relaxing some of their rules for certain groups of fully vaccinated non-essential travellers. And as vaccinations rates go up across countries, other nations are expected to follow suit. But after nearly 2 years of recording losses for travel businesses and continued worries about emerging variants of COVID-19, will air travel ever be the same again? Today we discuss how air travel will look this autumn and for the rest of the year for tourism businesses and international travellers. And for this we connect with Johnny Jett, travel expert and founder of johnnyjet.com. We also speak with Marion, JOPPE, and she's a professor of hospitality, food and tourist management at the University of Guelph. Now, thank you so much for joining both of us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Haven't had my coffee yet. And well, to start with you, Johnny. Now, many of us are itching to go travelling, also itching for caffeine, but most of us travel. We want to get back to jetting around the world again, going to different places. But the thing is, well, it looks like there's going to be a lot of demand. Some sites have reported that there's been an increase of interest and a definite interest in demand for flights to the UK and the US. But many are now questioning whether there'll be enough seats to go around once international travel starts picking up again. Which countries do you think are going to be some of the main tourist hotspots? And does the loosening of restrictions mean that prices are going to go up if there's higher demand?
Without a doubt, it's all about supply and demand. So the countries that are going to have the most Americans and North Americans going there are the ones, first of all, that are going to have the least amount of rules. So not many people want to go and have to do all kinds of quarantine tests or quarantine and do tests to get in multiple times. But, the usual suspects, France, the UK, Italy, Greece. Croatia's been hot because they've really loosened up the restrictions. And also, I think the countries that have really low COVID cases are going to do really well. And for North America, Mexico is always very popular because it's so close and so cheap. And a lot of these resorts that are there, they're actually offering you free quarantine if you do test positive, and free tests, because to get back into America, no matter if you're an American or vaccinated or not, you still have to present a COVID negative test. So, and some of those can be expensive, and not just expensive, but not easy to find in some places.
Right, they still have some of those barriers, a lot of cause of hassle remaining. And well, Marion, how long do you think it's going to take for the industry to recover fully, or at least see international travel rates back at pre-pandemic levels?
Well, it's going to vary greatly by country and by region of the world. As has just been pointed out, the restrictions that are in place by different countries are based very often on vaccination rates and cases. And so how countries respond to it varies tremendously. Some, like Mexico, like Greece, never put any restrictions in place for tourism, and their industry has been doing fairly well. Other countries are incredibly tight in spite of high vaccination rates. If I take just the two countries, because we're neighbors between the United States and Canada. Canada, we are just about 80% fully vaccinated in the population, and close to 90% when you look at one dose. So we are where most countries would think we have herd immunity or are getting close to it. And yet the country still has a closed border with the United States. The United States, their case count is far, far in excess of Canada's case count. But Canada is a much more cautious country than the United States. So you see these differences between countries doesn't necessarily follow logic or even the science in how the governments respond to restriction and easing of restrictions. And estimates are that, sorry?
No, I was going to say, I also think it's part political, unfortunately. I think,
Yes.
you know, I think if America, it's ridiculous that America has not opened the border with Canada. My wife's Canadian, and it's just, you know, it's been very difficult to get there. But I think the political aspect is if the U.S. opens a border with Canada, they have to open the border with Mexico, and I think that's what's holding them back, because they don't want to open up the southern border, because it will look bad, and if they don't open up, both borders. So I think that's the problem.
Right, and well, these easing of some regulations for the UK as well, they do come with the fine print. So obviously travellers need to be very careful before making any grand travel plans. And well, Johnny, many people though, they are very itching very much to travel abroad again. But over the course of the pandemic, many air travel related businesses and services, from airline companies to tax-free shopping outlets, they've not done very well. Some of them have gone under. Do you think consumers are going to face quite limited options in travel services, tourism for the time being, especially as airline companies, them in particular, they try to make up for the losses that they've experienced?
You know, I think that'll be very short term. I do think that once people start coming back, especially business travelers, and when they're there 24/7, I do think you'll see all these stores opening back up. They might be under new management or new owners, but they will be there. A lot of them have already returned, but you know, it wasn't like 6 months ago where you'd walk through the airport and so many shops were closed. I do think they will bounce back. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
Well, Marion, many airliners, they were undergoing structural problems even before the pandemic hit. Do you think all businesses in tourism are going to be able to recover, or do you think there'll be certain sectors that will have to adapt to the new normal after the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. And it's in some ways surprising that we have seen very few airline failures to date. And we're probably going to see some shakeup in the next couple of years. But that really speaks more to the fact that governments have taken action in the form of subsidies, loans, even stock purchases. They did that, for instance, with Air Italia, Scandinavian Airlines, and Israel's El Al, amongst others. And so the airlines, because of their strategic importance to countries, have received massive help from governments. Other sectors, not so much. Hotels and restaurants or attractions. If the country has had programs in place to support businesses in general, they may have been able to access those funds as well, but it's not targeted as it is for airlines. And so the hotel sector tends to be, at least have some very large corporate owners and players that are able to draw on reserves to survive these lockdowns, these repeated lockdowns. But in the restaurant sector, for instance, you're really dealing with many small businesses and family-operated establishments, and they won't necessarily survive, especially if there are repeated and extended lockdowns. And we have seen those in Canada, where, you know, cities like Toronto have had lockdowns for close to 8 months with very little ability to open up. And not every restaurant can switch to takeout and delivery. So there have been quite a few, and estimates by our national tourism organization, Destination Canada, is that we will probably lose about 35% of the businesses in tourism.
Oh, that's a great loss indeed. And as you mentioned, there are, you know, the restrictions, regulations, they're changing all the time, and it's really hard keeping up with the rules and regulations in your own city or the place where you live. But when it comes to traveling, you have to check the ones that concern your destination as well. And Marion, there seem to be different rules and regulations for each jurisdiction when it comes to accepting travellers, whether it's for a short-term stay or even for a simple transit. How should countries prepare to open up safely, and do you think these regulations are going to remain in place for the time being?
Well, the fact that every jurisdiction is following different rules and regulations, and that they, as you mentioned, change quite frequently, is one of the biggest obstacles to both domestic and international tourism. While we understand that everybody is concerned about safety, and you may know what's required within your own destination, with your own city or wherever you are living, that's not necessarily the case when you start to travel. And a lot of these rules are made by jurisdictions right down at the municipal level. So you go from one community to another, and you may have different rules in place. So it's not just what does it take to get into a country. It then also means what does it take to travel within that country. So yes, that's really quite daunting, and to be in compliance with all of those, especially because it can change at a moment's notice, makes travel very onerous, shall we say, on the traveler, because all the responsibility for knowing the rules that are in place are on the traveler. And even travel agents who deal with this all the time find it difficult to be on top of all the countries and their regions in the world. So that's why there is so much talk about having some kind of vaccine passport. And World Travel and Tourism Council and the United Nations World Tourism Organization have been talking about this for quite a while, as has the airline industry, because for them it's difficult too. They are supposed to be the gatekeepers, and yet the rules are different, right? And the documentation is different, and which vaccines are accepted by that country. Not everybody, for instance, accepts AstraZeneca as one example, or vaccines that come out of China or out of Russia. So how is that poor person that is checking in travelers for an airline supposed to know what's what and what's legitimate and what isn't? So they need to absolutely find something that is coordinated internationally.
Well, countries like Australia seem to be considering the idea of vaccine passports, but of course in every country the idea is going to be swayed by a lot of politics, so I suppose we'll save up that for a later discussion. But Johnny, from your experience, what is the best way right now to keep international travel both COVID-free and hassle-free?
Well, you got to keep the COVID cases down, number one. I think everyone in their home country needs to do their part. Social distance, wear their masks, keep those cases down, and I think that, and get testing. There has to be a lot of rapid tests. I mean, it would be nice if every flight that you got on, that not only that every worker or crew member but passenger is fully vaccinated, so your chances of getting the virus are much less. And also, I think when you arrive, if you can do a rapid test on arrival, and once you can keep these places open, I think you'll see travel just bounce back better than ever before. Really, there's such demand right now. People want to get in touch with their loved ones or their colleagues, and I think we're going to see a huge explosion in travel next summer for sure.
And Johnny, also, since the pandemic started, many travellers have been wondering what to do with their travel rewards, credit points and mileages. I mean, how are airlines around the world asking customers to use or utilise their unused points amid COVID-19? And would you have any tips for travellers in actually making the best use out of their reward points at this point?
For sure. Well, you don't want to use your reward points for shopping online. So a lot of the airlines will be like, hey, would you like to buy an iPad or something? Don't ever shop online. Even if you have so many points that you don't want to fly, donate them. There's so many worthy causes that need miles, and you can just go onto the airline's website, and they have partners like St. Jude's and all the American Cancer Society, all those. You can donate your miles, but the best way to use your miles is to buy international business class or first class tickets. You'll get the most bang for your buck, and a seat that could cost $10,000 right now, some of them are going really cheap. I just bought a ticket last week between LA and New York, first business class, 25,000 miles. Normally that is 80,000 miles. So just keep looking, and there's a lot of different websites to sign up to, including my own. So a shameless plug, please sign up to my newsletter. But you can, there's tons of blogs out there that share this kind of information.
And well, we're out of time, unfortunately, but it looks like we need a second round of discussions in, in the weeks to come. And well, thank you so much for joining us. That was Johnny Jett, travel expert and founder of JohnnyJett.com, and Marion JOPPE, Professor of Hospitality, Food and Tourism Management at the University of Guelph. Thank you both again so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.